Hello, this is Chad Smith from BC Gurus. In part 6 of our site template series, we're going to go over the dynamic menus. Woo. So the first thing to do when creating a dynamic menu is to create the menu. But when you're done filling in the menu name, you're kind of confronted with the decision. And this decision could really affect the outcome of your website. So let's go ahead and take a look at what these menu types are all about. So when you're in the back end of your Business Catalyst site within the admin, let's go ahead and click on the Site Manager and go to Menus. From here you can add or edit any menu items. We're going to add a menu and say we're creating a sidebar for the About page. Now, you might hear me talk about this in a few other videos, but naming convention is kind of key when it comes into creating a nice, concise, understandable website. For people that are going to come in here after you're done, it's easy for them to know that this is a sidebar navigation that's going to be on the About page. There might be other navigations that you're going to put on the About page, so making sure to define which is what and what is which makes it a lot easier. So now that we've put in our name, this is the one decision that we were talking about that could destroy the planet and everything on it. What does default CSS or CSS HTML only mean? And for this, I feel only an example will do it justice. So let's go to Dreamweaver and look at each of them individually. So here we are in Dreamweaver, and we got my default CSS HTML only menus loaded up. And for default, you can see this is a lot of code just for a small menu. If we go to the design view, you can see we just have 8 menu items here, and all we really want to do is display them on a website, but we already have 40 lines of code just for that menu. And if we were to apply source formatting, and we get down to 122 lines of code just for 8 menu items. So what Business Catalyst is doing is adding some JavaScript for selected states. It's going to add some CSS for styling, and then it's going to add a table wrapped in a div, and then all of our navigational items on there, which they're not even going to be links, they're going to be text on a page that has an on-click event to go to that page that it's supposed to go to. Get a lot of weird IDs and class names, and then another script tag at the bottom. So about 5 more HTTP requests than you need for a navigational item. So in my professional opinion, I would advise you to not use the default layout and instead focus on the CSS or the HTML only CSS. Alright, so here's the CSS menu. Now, as you can see, it's a little bit better. We're only starting off with 20 lines of code, and if I apply some source formatting, we only get to 111. So that's not too bad. So let's see what we're going to really add to the page. We got one script for a selected state JavaScript. So still some embedded style sheet items for our navigation, and then a div wrapping an unordered list this time with another script file at the bottom. So still 3 different HTTP requests going to come through for this menu here, and then we got these weird IDs associated with our menu. Now the worst part about this menu is that it's going to have all this CSS on the page, and if you're coding out your own website and you're making your own style sheet, there's no reason to have these styles on the page. So better to keep all the styles onto your style sheets, and I would really suggest not using the custom created IDs for the navigations. You're going to probably have this in a div called nav. So targeting that instead of the ID that Business Catalyst gives you will be a little bit more efficient. So if something changes, or you want to use those styles on another site, you don't have to worry about the fact that you're just targeting this one specific unordered list, and then changing it could be a hassle. So that is the CSS type menu. And then we have the CSS HTML only. So now we've gotten rid of all the CSS. We just have two different scripts that's going to take care of the selected state for us. And once the menus are on a page, if there's more than one, this script up here is only going to have to run one time, so we don't going to have that many HTTP requests with the HTML only type. We're still going to have some wonky IDs given to us, but we can get around that once we wrapped our unordered list within like a nav div. So those are the three types of menu options. So now that we're back in the admin section of our Business Catalyst site, we can make a better decision when creating the menu type. We don't want tables. I want to use my own CSS, so we're going to use CSS HTML only. And then we can click Next and work on the menu items. So when you're adding or editing your menu items, you do have a few options to kind of customize your menu. So even if you're not doing your own CSS and you want Business Catalyst to do it for you, that's quite alright. It will, if you just want to probably select the CSS menu type instead of the CSS HTML only. But for my example, I'm going to be using the CSS HTML only, and I'm going to show you the options available for those. So now that we created our sidebar called About, and we're in our menu items, we can give the item label, which is going to be what the user sees on the front end of the website. So we can just call Team BC Gurus will be our label. The item tooltip is going to be for when you're hovering over an item. We're not going to use that today. Use an image. We're going to use CSS to do an image replacement. So the next thing we're going to add is just the URL. And since we're in the About section, we'll probably need the About folder, and then Team. Now the item width and height, again, we're going to be able to take care of that ourselves with CSS. The target frame, since it's going to be within our own page, we don't need to add like a underscore blank to make it come up in a new tab. We're just going to leave that one blank as well. And then parent, right now we're only going to have the root available, but that's for like if this was a second level navigation item that's going to be underneath another navigational item, so I'll show you in a minute. And then we have the option to assign our own CSS to the menu. So if we check on this, we can add a class name to the item, which is going to add it to the list item for that unordered list. We can add an item rollover CSS class, an item selected CSS class, and an item ID name. Now normally, the only ones I ever use are the ID name and the class name. I take care of the rollover and the selected within my CSS style sheets. And the item name and the class name, again, are going to be added to the list item of the unordered list. So when you're building out your site on like a static version, you might want to be sure if you're going to add a class name or a ID to the navigation, make sure it's on the list item, not the A tag, so that when you're transferring it to a BC template, it's very seamless. So we can give this an ID. We'll save that. And now we have one of our navigation items there. So if we're going to add another one, say we want the contact form within the About section, we'll give it a URL. And now for the root, I can select Team BC Gurus if I want it to be underneath, like a drop down second level underneath Team BC Gurus. Another way to do it would be to save the item, and then you can just drag it to Team BC Gurus, and then it creates that hierarchy for your links. or you can bring it back to the root, and now it's back to the root. If we want contact to be above BC Gurus, we can right click and hit move up. We can also right click to move down to rename, remove, or disable. Disable is a good feature for items that may or may not be coming back. When you delete a page inside Business Catalyst, you're not going to be able to undo that. So it's always a better idea to disable pages so that if you ever needed that content again, or if that page ever became live again, you're going to be able just to enable it, and then it's so much easier to get that back live. If you delete a page, you're going to have to recreate it all and then add it all back into the dynamic menus, and then it could just be a hassle. So disabling is a really good feature within Business Catalyst. Now, even though I didn't really go into it in the admin section of my test site, there are other sections to the menu properties. So if you selected a CSS type or a default type navigation, we can go into the menu look and then customize the overall look of the root menu, any sub-menus, make your menu vertical or horizontal, and add that sub-menu arrow to your navigation. And then for the items themselves, you could come in and define font sizes, colors, and text styles. But again, this can be all controlled within your CSS style sheet, so you may not want to have that added within the content of your page above your navigation. Now, one of the newer features for Business Catalyst is the module menu version 2, which you don't really see much because you can't really add it via any module manager yet. You have to kind of know where to find the code to add it. So it's going to be more of an advanced customization option, but it does give you a lot more options when you're creating your menus, and it'll let you control the layout of your menu a little bit more. So let's go ahead and Dreamweaver and see what that looks like. So now that we're in Business Catalyst, let's go ahead and take a look at a template that is set up for our ACE site. And you can see the module menu 2 at work. So here's our About template, and you can see we have our main navigation, our social navigation, and these are quite different than the menu or module menus you're used to seeing, because this is going to be the version 2. So you see another one for the side nav, and then we also have one for the footer, but that's going to be held within this content holder. So let's go ahead and take a look at a normal menu module. So we're going to come up to my Business Catalyst tab, we'll grab the menus, we'll choose, we're looking at the primary nav, so let's grab the template primary. It looks correct, we'll insert that. So as you can see, this module menu 2 has just basically one more type of information. We're still going to get the ID that's right here, and we're just going to tell it that it's a version 2 menu. Now, like I said, you can customize this a little bit more than just a regular menu. So let's go ahead and look here. In your module template folder, we'll decollapse that. We have our menu folder, and when you just open this up for the first time, all you're going to see is module templates, menu, and default. So let's go ahead and look at the default folder first. Now each of these folders are going to have the same files within them: a container, a group, and a child item. The container is basically going to be what contains the navigation, so we'll click on that one. So actually I'm going to open up the HTML only CSS again. So here you can see the div with our custom ID. That's going to be made from the container file here. So it creates a div. It's going to change the menu, or my menu 1, into a custom ID using the JavaScript provided by Business Catalyst. And then the unordered list that's created is going to be this tag menu group. If we go to the group HTML page, now we have an unordered list with the tag menu child items. Now this code is also going to give an ID to the UL, and you can see in the CSS only HTML that we got a similar IDs for our div and our nav. And that's just going to be added on through here from that JavaScript code. And then finally we have a child item, which is just going to be the list items themselves. And try to make this a little bit more legible for you. So we have a tag for IDs, tag for classes, the item URL, the label, or the link they're going to click on, and then another menu group, which is going to be for the submenu items that are going to be underneath this link here. Now that we know what's in each folder, let's see how I customize them for the primary navigation for ACE. Let's go ahead and close these. Now, if we look at my module template group is called utility. So when I first came here, I right-clicked on the default, went to edit, and then duplicate. And that's going to duplicate that default folder so that if I need to just use a basic menu or the default menu again, I can go back to that easily. I get a default-copy folder. And from then I could just rename this whatever I need to for that particular navigation. But for the utility that I used for my primary navigation, let's go ahead and look at the container folder. And you can see the drastic change from our last container folder. If we open that back up, instead of wrapping my unordered list in a div and adding all of this JavaScript, all I wanted to do was output the URL or the unordered list on a page. Now, if we go to the ACE site, you can see that we still have hover state because that's the CSS. And if we go into a site, I have a selected state because I wrote some JavaScript that will help me with that. And I don't need an extra HTTP request that's going to be resulted in this dynamic menu. So I completely got rid of everything there. As far as the group goes, we're going to leave that the same because it has to be in an unordered list if we're going to have list items in it. But I don't want to add any IDs to that. And if we look, and I just inspect element with Firebug on my nav, I don't have any extra script tags. I just have a nice clean div with a nice clean unordered list that goes down into my navigation. So my child item looks the same. I did not add anything in it. But there are a few things you can add to a module menu too. Let's go ahead and look at what options we have. Now here within the knowledge base, you can see we have it working with module menu 2. And this goes into how to kind of copy the default folder, what each file in those folders are going to be about. And then kind of goes down to the bottom. You can kind of see what tags are available. Now this should be up to date, but in the new Adobe forum, Liam has kind of redid this in his own way. I think he did a very good job, so we're going to show his as well. But basically, this gives you a list of all the tags that's available. So it's really nice that we can really customize and edit our menus the way that we want and not just be stuck with the module menu that adds all the script tags to our page. Because if you think about it, on my ACE site, so that navigation for the module menu is going to add HTTP requests via those JavaScript files. So if each one is adding HTTP request, I got 1, 2, 3 to 4 modules or dynamic menus on a page at a time. The about page is going to have 4 with the sidebar navigation. So that's 4 extra HTTP requests that I don't need. And for like the footer navigation, it's never going to need a selected state. So we can go ahead and we don't even need the JavaScript for that one. Same with the social navigation. I like to put these in a dynamic menu so that the client can easily edit it if they need to. And let's go ahead and look at that in the back end to show you how I made this all work together without any JavaScript. So back in Dreamweaver here, if we open up my social folder under my module templates, we don't like errors, so we'll open up the container, and you can see, just like the utility, I stripped out all the JavaScript. I don't need to have any of that in there. We'll close that. And now look at the group, and I've gone in and I've added a list item. So when I coded out my social navigation, that little follow us title that's on there, instead of putting it outside the ordered list, I just added it to the unordered list. And then when I made my dynamic menu, I just added that list item above my other list items, and then I was able to just swap out my social navigation with a dynamic menu module. If we go into my child item file, you can see I also needed to make a target blank for this one so that it would open up in a new tab. So I added target equals and then the menu item target frame. So within the business catalyst, in that menu item, I added underscore blank to the target frame so that it would open up in a new tab. And then within Dreamweaver, I added that to my A tag. So there's a good example of customization for a module menu 2. And the last thing I want to talk about when we're talking about dynamic menus is the deleting or updating of pages or menu items. Now, a web page and a menu item are two separate things. Even though they work very well together, when you want to go to the About page, you click the About link. But if you change the About page to the About Us page, that About link is not going to know where to go anymore. So deleting or updating pages, you're also going to have to delete or update the dynamic menu. Now, as I said before, it's better to disable pages and disable menu items so that in the off chance you have to re-add those to the site, it's a lot easier. But if they are deleted or changed, either way, you're going to have to do it in both sections of the site. And that concludes the module or dynamic menu module. I hope you enjoyed it, and good customization out there on your module menu 2s. Thank you.